When Barbra Streisand met Judy Garland in 1963, Judy whispered 6 words that would haunt her forever. "Don't let them do to you what they did to me." 6 days later, Judy was gone. Now, at 82, Barbra is finally revealing the dark truth behind those words, the toxic Hollywood system that nearly broke her, and the shocking story of how she fought back. Barbra Streisand was born on April 24, 1942, in Brooklyn, New York. Her childhood was full of struggles. When she was just a baby, her father, Emmanuel, passed away. He had been a high school English teacher, and his death left Barbara's family in a tough spot. Her mother, Diana, had to raise Barbra and her older brother, Sheldon, on her own. Money was so tight that they had to move in with her grandparents just to survive. When Barbra was 7, her mother married a man named Louis Kind, who sold used cars. Life didn't get much easier. Barbra didn't get along with her stepfather, and she felt he didn't treat her kindly. Even her mother didn't seem to believe in her. She told Barbra she wasn't pretty enough to be in show business, which hurt deeply. Other kids at school made fun of her looks too. But even with all this hardship, Barbra had something special: her voice. She loved to sing and started showing her talent in school choirs. She went to Erasmus Hall High School, where she met Neil Diamond, who would also go on to become famous. Despite the difficulties she faced, Barbra was smart and driven. She worked hard in school and graduated at just 16 years old, ranking 4th in her class. After high school, she decided to do something bold. She changed her name from Barbra to Barbra. Dropping the middle A made her name unique, and it reflected how she wanted to stand out. At 18, Barbra moved to Manhattan to chase her dream of being a star. It wasn't easy. She lived with friends, worked odd jobs, and took acting lessons. One night, her friends convinced her to enter a singing contest at a nightclub. Even though she had never taken a singing lesson, Barbra stepped onto the stage and gave it her all. Her powerful voice and unique style amazed the audience. She won the contest, and that moment changed everything. Barbra started performing as a cabaret singer, proving to everyone who doubted her, including her mother, that she had real talent. In 1962, Barbra's big break came on Broadway in a musical called I Can Get It For You Wholesale. She auditioned for a small role as a secretary named Miss Marmalstein. To stand out, she wore an old 1930s fur coat she had bought at a thrift store for $10. Her audition was so impressive that the writers made her role bigger just to showcase her talent. When the show opened, Barbra stole the spotlight. She was so good that she earned a Tony nomination, an incredible achievement for her first Broadway performance. The success on Broadway led to a record deal, and in 1963, Barbra released her first album, the Barbra Streisand album. It was a massive hit. Her voice was unlike anything people had heard before, and she brought a fresh style to classic songs. The album won 2 Grammy Awards, including Album of the Year. It was clear that Barbra wasn't just talented, she was unstoppable. At just 21 years old, Barbra Streisand stepped onto the stage of the Winter Garden Theater in Funny Girl on March 26, 1964, and forever changed her life. She played Fanny Brice, a famous comedian and singer, and brought the character to life in a way no one else could. The show ran for over 1,300 performances, and people packed the theater every single night. But Barbra almost didn't get the role. The producer, Ray Stark, wanted someone else, Anne Bancroft, but Anne was pregnant and couldn't do it. Barbra auditioned, and during the audition, she stopped singing because she didn't like how the music sounded. That might have ruined things for most people, but it actually impressed the producers, and they gave her the role. Her song People from the show became a huge hit, selling over 1 million copies. Barbra even got nominated for a Tony Award, though she didn't win. Even before the show opened, she was such a rising star that her contract let her take time off to record music and appear on TV, a rare thing for an actress. In 1965, Barbra took another big step with her first TV special, My Name is Barbra. She was only 22 years old but produced the show herself. Unlike other TV specials that had guest stars, this one was all about her. She performed songs in different styles, and one of the most memorable moments was a medley of children's songs she performed in a toy store. She came up with that idea herself. The special was a huge hit, watched by over 18 million people, and won 5 Emmy Awards. After that, CBS signed her for more specials, paying her $5 million. A massive deal at the time. But making the show wasn't easy. Barbra didn't like how it was edited and threatened to cancel it just days before it aired. After lots of last-minute changes, she finally agreed to let it be shown, and it became a big success. Barbra's move into movies came in 1968, when she starred in the film version of Funny Girl. She played the same role, Fanny Brice, and gave another incredible performance. The movie came out on September 19, 1968, and was the highest-grossing film of the year, earning over $58 million. Her songs, People and Don't Rain on My Parade, became classics, with Don't Rain on My Parade filmed in one take on a tugboat in New York Harbor. The film was a massive hit, earning over $58.5 million at the box office. At just 26 years old, Streisand won the Academy Award for Best Actress. This was even more surprising because it was her very first film, a rare achievement. Her win became part of Oscar history when she tied with Katharine Hepburn for The Lion in Winter. It was the only tie ever in a major Oscar category. The success of Funny Girl didn't just make Streisand a star, it saved Columbia Pictures from going bankrupt. Even the studio head, who had once doubted her looks, admitted he was wrong. "I was wrong about the nose," he famously said, "but I was right about the talent." In the 1970s, Streisand became even bigger, ruling both Hollywood and the music charts. In 1973, she starred in The Way We Were with Robert Redford. The movie was a huge success, earning over $50 million. The title song became a chart-topping hit, staying at #1 for 3 weeks. The movie's mix of romance and politics deeply connected with audiences. Streisand's performance inspired young women to care about activism and speak their minds. Shockingly, she wasn't nominated for Best Actress, which caused a lot of backlash and accusations of sexism. In music, Streisand kept breaking records. Her 1980 album Guilty, made with Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees, became her best-selling album ever. It sold over 15 million copies, and the lead single, Woman in Love, stayed at #1 for 3 weeks. This album also made Streisand the first artist ever to have #1 albums in 5 straight decades, a record that still stands today. Some of Streisand's biggest hits came from surprising partnerships. In 1978, her duet with Neil Diamond, You Don't Bring Me Flowers, started as a unique accident. A radio DJ in Kentucky mixed their solo versions of the song as a gift for his wife during their divorce. The version became so popular that Columbia Records had Streisand and Diamond recorded as a duet. It went to #1 and sold over 1 million copies. Their performance at the 1980 Grammy Awards became one of the most memorable moments in Grammy history. Around the same time, Streisand teamed up with Donna Summer for the disco hit No More Tears, Enough is Enough. This song made history as the first duet by 2 women to reach #1 on the Billboard charts. It became a disco favorite and sold over 2 million copies. Barbra's rise wasn't easy. In the early 1960s, people in Hollywood told her she wasn't attractive enough to succeed. Some even suggested she get a nose job, but she refused. She believed her unique look was part of her identity. During Funny Girl, the director wanted to only film her from one side, but she stood her ground, insisting they film her from all angles. Streisand also demanded creative control in her music career. At just 21, she signed a deal with Columbia Records that let her make all the creative decisions about her albums, even though it meant less money up front. This was unheard of for a new artist, especially a woman. By 1970, Streisand became the first woman to win Album of the Year at the Grammys for her album People. In 1969, she was named Entertainer of the Year by the American Guild of Variety Artists, breaking a streak of 53 years where only men had won the award. Meanwhile, Barbra made her directional debut in 1983 in Yentl. She spent 15 years trying to turn Isaac Bashevis Singer's story into a movie. When she finally succeeded, she didn't just direct the film, she also wrote, produced, and starred in it. This made her the first woman to do all of these things for a major studio movie. Yentl wasn't just a creative risk, it was also a big success. The movie earned $40 million in the US and won 2 Academy Awards, proving that Streisand's vision was worth it. Making the movie was far from easy. Streisand wanted everything to feel real and honest. She studied Jewish culture, learned Yiddish, and insisted on perfection in every scene. For one moment in the film, she did 70 takes just to get it right. She controlled every detail, from costumes to the music. Her idea to use songs only for her character's inner thoughts made Yentl stand out from other musicals. But her determination faced a lot of pushback. Studio executives doubted her abilities, with some suggesting she hire a male director instead. Streisand ignored them and even paid part of the $14 million budget herself. When Yentl finally premiered, audiences gave her a standing ovation, and critics loved it. Even though Yentl succeeded, Streisand faced constant sexism. When she directed The Prince of Tides in 1991, it was another big hit, earning over $110 million and 7 Oscar nominations. But once again, Streisand was left out of the Best Director category. This snub wasn't just unfair, it showed how Hollywood treated female directors. At the time, only one woman had ever been nominated for Best Director in the Academy's history. People protested, calling the exclusion sexist, and the controversy was even joked about at the Oscars. Streisand also faced criticism for being so involved in her movies. Some accused her of being controlling or vain because she starred in, directed, and produced her films. But she believed it was necessary to make sure her vision came through. On the set of The Mirror Has Two Faces in 1996, her perfectionism caused tension, with some crew members walking off. Despite the challenges, the movie did well, and actress Lauren Bacall won a Golden Globe for her performance. Instead of giving up, Streisand used her struggles to push for change. She became a mentor for women in film and spoke out about double standards. She highlighted how men are seen as strong, while women are called bossy for the same behavior. Streisand also supported projects by female filmmakers, using her influence to open doors for others. In 1985, Barbra Streisand decided to take a big risk. She had been away from Broadway music for 15 years, focusing on pop songs that made her a superstar. But she wanted to go back to her roots and released the Broadway album. At the time, pop and rock music were everywhere, and no one thought a Broadway-themed album would succeed. But Barbra proved everyone wrong. The album went straight to #1 on the Billboard charts, and stayed there for 3 weeks. It became one of her best-selling records ever, showing that Broadway music could still touch people's hearts. What made the album so special was how much care Barbra put into it. She worked with Stephen Sondheim, a famous Broadway composer, who even wrote new lyrics for her songs, Putting It Together and Send in the Clowns. Barbra spent 8 months picking and recording the perfect songs, and her hard work paid off. Critics loved it. One called it the album of a lifetime, and it even won a Grammy. Years later, it became a quadruple platinum album, proving how much people loved it over time. In 1994, Barbra did something even braver. She returned to live concerts after staying away for 27 years because of stage fright. Her tour, Barbra Streisand in Concert, became a huge event. Fans couldn't wait to see her perform again. Tickets sold out in minutes, with 5 million people trying to buy them in just the first hour. The tour made $50 million that year and broke records in every city she visited. The final show was aired on HBO and became one of their most-watched musical specials ever. It won 5 Emmy Awards and reminded the world why Barbra was one of the greatest performers of all time. Barbra didn't stop there. In 2006, she went on another big tour, this time performing in North America and Europe. Some cities had never seen her live before, so fans were willing to pay sky-high ticket prices. The tour made over $119 million and broke records in almost every venue. She even performed with Il Divo, a popular operatic group, which gave the shows a fresh twist. Even as she got older, Barbra kept breaking records. In 2014, she became the first artist to have #1 albums in 6 decades, starting in the 1960s. Her album Partners featured duets with stars like Michael Bublé and Stevie Wonder, and it was a huge hit. 2 years later, she did it again with Encore, making it 7 decades at the top. No one else had ever done that before. In 2021, she released Release Me 2, which included songs she had never shared before. It was another success, proving she could still surprise her fans after all these years. Barbra's talent wasn't just about music. She was also a symbol of American culture. She performed at presidential events, like Bill Clinton's inaugural gala in 1993, where she sang Evergreen and other classics. She also performed at events for John F. Kennedy and Barack Obama. These moments showed that Barbra wasn't just a singer, she was part of the country's history. Meanwhile, Barbra's personal life had ups and downs. Her first marriage was to actor Elliott Gould, and their story began in 1961. They met while auditioning for the Broadway musical I Can Get It For You Wholesale. Barbra was just 19 and new to the stage, while Gould was already a known actor. Sparks flew immediately, and they fell in love. 2 years later, on September 13, 1963, they got married in a quiet ceremony in Carson City, Nevada. Barbra was 21, and Elliott was 25. At the time, both of their careers were taking off. That same year, Barbra released her first album, the Barbra Streisand album. It was a huge success, reaching number 8 on the Billboard charts and winning her 2 Grammy Awards. Elliott's career was also on the rise. He starred in hit movies like The Night They Raided Minsky's and Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, the latter earning him an Oscar nomination. Everything seemed perfect, and in 1966, they welcomed their only child, Jason Gould. But as Barbra's fame kept growing, their relationship began to fall apart. Elliott later said that her success changed everything. "We didn't grow together," he admitted. "She became more important than us." By 1969, they had separated, and their divorce was finalized in 1971. Despite the split, they stayed friendly, especially for Jason's sake. Years later, Jason acted alongside Barbra in her movie The Prince of Tides. Their ability to stay close for their son would influence how Barbra handled her family life in the future, especially when she married James Brolin in 1998. After her divorce, Barbra's love life became a big topic in the tabloids. One of her most famous relationships was with John Peters, a hairdresser who later became a movie producer. They started dating in 1973, and he even produced her 1976 remake of A Star Is Born. Their relationship lasted almost a decade, but it wasn't without drama. Peters later claimed that Barbra had flings with some of her co-stars, including Robert Redford and Chris Christopherson. Barbra also dated Richard Baskin, the heir to the Baskin-Robbins ice cream fortune from 1983 to 1987. She had brief romances with actors Richard Gere and Clint Eastwood around the same time, surprising fans because of how different they were from her. Another unexpected twist came from Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. In his memoirs, he revealed that he had a romantic relationship with Barbra in the 1970s. He described her as sweet and charming, but admitted their lives were too complicated for it to last. One of Barbra's most shocking romances came in the 1990s when she dated tennis star Andre Agassi. Barbra was 51, and Andre was just 23 when they got together in 1992. Fans and the media couldn't believe it, but the two didn't care. Barbra often attended Andre's matches, cheering him on from the crowd. Andre, in turn, admired her talent and personality. Their relationship only lasted 2 years, ending in 1993. In his autobiography, Andre later described their time together as like wearing hot lava, intense but unsustainable. The age difference and their very different lives made it impossible to work. Barbra Streisand and James Brolin's love story began in the most unexpected way. A blind date set up by their friends. It was July 1st, 1996. Barbra was 54, and James was 56. They met at a dinner party hosted by Barbra's ex-boyfriend, John Peters. Imagine how strange that must have felt for her, walking into a house tied to her past. Barbra didn't expect anything special from the night. In fact, she felt so shy when she arrived that she avoided the whole situation. Instead of meeting James right away, she went downstairs to play with the kids at the party. When Barbra finally came face-to-face with James, it wasn't exactly love at first sight. She had pictured him as a rugged man with a beard and wild, wavy hair. But when she saw James, his hair was short, and he didn't have a beard at all. Barbra couldn't hide her surprise. She ran her hand through his hair and asked, "Who messed up your hair?" It might sound rude, but James didn't take it that way. Instead, they laughed, and something clicked between them. They ended up talking for hours. James was drawn to Barbra's humor and intelligence, and for her, the timing felt almost perfect. She had just finished working on The Mirror Has Two Faces, a movie about finding love later in life, and here she was, starting a new chapter of her own. Their connection grew fast, but life didn't make it easy. Just after they met, James had to leave for Ireland to direct a movie. Even though they were far apart, they stayed close. They talked on the phone all the time, sometimes until late at night. Barbra even admitted she once fell asleep on the bathroom floor with the phone pressed to her ear. Those long calls helped them build something strong, even with an ocean between them. By November of that year, only 4 months after their first meeting, they stepped out together for the first time at the premiere of Barbra's movie, The Mirror Has Two Faces. 2 years later, on the exact date of their first meeting, they got married at Barbra's Malibu home. It was a small, private ceremony filled with love, marking the start of a life they chose to build away from the public eye. Since their wedding in 1998, Barbra and James have lived a quiet, private life together. This is far different from Barbra's earlier years in the spotlight. They've decided to avoid the flashy Hollywood scene. Barbra once said, "We never dress up to go out anywhere. We don't go to premieres. We don't go anywhere with cameras." Instead, they spend their weekends at home, often staying in bed, reading to each other, or simply enjoying time together. It's a life they both love. Their Malibu home has become their safe haven. The property is stunning, complete with lush gardens, a barn-style guest house, and even a little shopping street in the basement where Barbra keeps her collections. It's a space that feels like their own little world, away from the noise of Hollywood. While they value their privacy, they do step out now and then to support causes that matter to them, like women's heart health, a passion of Barbra's. Their relationship is also unique in other ways. For instance, they keep separate bank accounts. James decided this after lessons from his past marriages. "I have my own money, and she has her own money," he once said. This simple arrangement has worked perfectly for them. Even now, as they've grown older, Barbra is 81 and James is 83, they continue to support each other's dreams. James has even talked about wanting to act in a film directed by Barbra, proving that their connection is still growing after more than 20 years together. Hollywood loved creating rivalries, especially between women. The industry thrived on drama and sensational stories. Barbra's experience with Judy was only one example. In 1963, Barbra was just 21 when she performed with Judy, then 41 on the Judy Garland show. Their duet of Happy Days Are Here Again and Get Happy became legendary, not because of any feud, but because of the connection they shared. In her memoir, My Name is Barbra, Streisand said people were desperate to find rivalry where there wasn't any. When they couldn't find a fight, they made one up, she wrote. Instead, Judy treated Barbra like a younger sister, or even a daughter. During their performance, Judy reached out and brushed Barbra's hair back, a small but tender moment that showed her affection. Their friendship continued after the show. Judy visited Barbra's apartment in New York and called her often. At one party, Judy arrived late and said something that stayed with Barbra forever. "Don't let them do to you what they did to me." At the time, Barbra didn't understand what Judy meant. But years later, it became clear. Judy was warning her about the harsh realities of fame and the pressures of Hollywood. Tragically, this advice came just 6 days before Judy's sudden death. Those words haunted Barbra, and she carried them with her throughout her career. The media also tried to pit her against other stars, like Judy's daughter, Liza Minnelli. Even the playful banter between Barbra and Judy during their duet was twisted into something it wasn't. In truth, there was nothing but admiration between the two. Judy had once told Liza, "After hearing Barbra sing, I'll never open my mouth again." That one sentence says everything about the respect Judy had for Barbra, shattering any idea of jealousy or rivalry. Barbra's rise to fame wasn't without its challenges. When she starred in Funny Girl on Broadway in 1964, her co-star Sidney Chaplin made her life miserable. After she rejected his romantic advances, he began to harass her relentlessly. During performances, he would whisper cruel insults in her ear, while the audience thought they were watching a tender moment. The stress caused Barbra to have panic attacks, and she even became physically sick before shows. Despite this, she refused to quit. Chaplin was eventually fired, but the damage was already done. The experience left Barbra with stage fright, something she battled for decades. Years later, when she directed and starred in Yentl in 1983, Barbra faced another difficult situation. Her co-star, Mandy Patinkin, admitted early in the production that he had expected them to have an affair. Barbra was stunned and made it clear that wasn't going to happen. Mandy's behavior created tension on set, and Barbra ended up rewriting scenes to reduce the physical closeness between their characters. It was a frustrating situation, but Barbra handled it with professionalism, even as it made her job as director and star much harder. Barbra also made tough decisions behind the camera. In 1990, while preparing to film The Prince of Tides, she replaced young actor Chris O'Donnell with her own son, Jason Gould, for a key role. Barbra called Chris personally to let him know. Though this decision brought criticism for nepotism, Barbra stood by it, saying her son rarely asked for anything and deserved the chance. Chris moved on to other successful projects, but the incident showed how personal and professional choices often overlapped for Barbra.